Welcome to MyPodClass, where faculty and students share perspectives on college teaching and learning. I'm Professor Tim West, and I'm joined today by my colleague and all-around good person, Michelle Delaney. She's actually a graduate student, so I'm expecting her to bring the student perspective. Today's topic is, what's in a college classroom? Now, while I have a lot of ideas, more importantly, what do students and Michelle think about the classroom experience? Ultimately, I guess I question whether colleges even need brick and mortar classrooms anymore, given the technology. So welcome, Michelle. I look forward to your ideas about the college classroom experience. So let's go down this path a little bit. So what is in a college classroom? Let me count the things. So I think of it as a system of learning, that we have content that we're after. Students and faculty all enter the classroom. So those things are inputs. The classroom itself, I think of as a process. And then these are the outputs. So the classic piece, inputs, process, outputs, is a classic kind of systems thinking that goes into almost anything we do. But I wanted to think about it in terms of the classroom and how I adapt and how students are adapting to that new world. So the first question I posed to Michelle was this idea of, why do students even go to class, and then why do they decide no longer to go to class as the semester moves along? So together we created a quick visual for you that kind of handles frames our general conversation. And so the idea is this: why do students go to class, or why do I even go to class? Well, professors, we kind of have to go to class. If not, then this is usually not good for us, and we wind up in the dean's office. So our attendance usually is consistent almost every day. The challenge is students. How often do students attend? And over the course of the semester, you usually kind of see students hanging in there with you for the most part until you get to the first exam. Then they try to evaluate whether they need to still come to class, and a variety of things might throw them off in terms of options that are better than listening to the instructor. So given that setup, I want Michelle to kind of talk to us a little bit about this idea of the choice the students have to make, how often they revise the choice, and what other things are kind of out there that I never even think of. So that's our goal. So Michelle, what do you think of the graph that we put up, and how would you change it?
I think overall it's very representative of what happens in universities, and not only what happens, but what people expect to happen when they start a class. And obviously this varies per student and per class, as some professors require attendance as a big portion of the grade, which in my opinion I think is helpful, because it really is that thing in the back of your head knowing that that's your motivation to go to class.
So do you think the incentive itself of having that part of the grading is one thing?
I do. I think it's such an easy thing to go to class that if people are risking their grade just for an hour of their time once or 2 or 3 times a week, I think people will go to class for that, if that's such a big portion of their grade. But I think this graph is representative of classes that don't necessarily have attendance or participation as part of a class grade, because every student wants to go to class up until exam 1, because no one knows what to expect on the first exam, what it's going to test, what just the entire class environment looks like, depending on the teacher and the professor, as so many different professors have different outlooks and teaching styles.
So what you're saying is that little section right there is student fear.
Potentially.
They don't necessarily know what's coming, so the threat of exam 1 increases their attendance just because they don't know what's going on.
I would say so. I think that's a good reason for people to want to prepare well for their first exam and know what to expect, is go to class, see how the professor is presenting the material, and if that's what's helping them learn. But I think once you get past that exam 1, and depending on people's grading and their overall success within the exam, I think some people do turn to YouTube, looking at the professor's PowerPoints and prior exams, and even going to tutors to find a better way to learn if either it worked for them and they think they can handle it themselves, or if it didn't work for them, potentially relying on other outlets to learn.
A couple of things that I've learned in just the last semester is that YouTube is often replacing what we do. Students come to me now and say, well, the YouTube didn't help me. Can you help me? Second, though, there's a very robust set of tutors out there for hire. And former students of yours or mine may set up shop out on the web and charge whatever just through Venmo, get paid for their service with the expectation that students will think they already know everything. So it's much more of a market out there now than if I ever expected. So those things were kind of surprising to me. So what else would surprise me?
I'd say those would probably be the biggest four, but I think it is definitely interesting to see how those would impact a student's grade if they're relying on those rather than the professor's PowerPoints in class and the material that the professor is teaching as the semester goes on. And I wonder how that would affect their grade.
So, okay. Well, some general perspectives as we set this thing up in terms of just getting people to a classroom. So we're going to kind of follow this up with additional things of factors that influence the inputs, influence the outputs, and then how we can structure a classroom that optimizes these things as they work together. So thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again soon.